Here's a question most people can't answer honestly. If everything you buy costs twice as much in 15 years, groceries, gas, your electric bill, do you know if your retirement income will keep up? Most people don't, and that's not because they're bad with money. It's because inflation is sneaky. It doesn't show up as one big scary number. It shows up as an extra 50 cents on a gallon of milk this year, a little more on your insurance premium next year, a slightly higher copay the year after that. By the time you notice, it's already reshaped your budget. If you're 50, 60, or already retired, this matters more than almost anything else in your financial picture, more than which fund you're in, more than your exact withdrawal rate. Because inflation isn't a one-time event. It's a force that keeps working on your money every single year you're alive, and retirement can last a long time. So in this video, I want to walk you through exactly what every retiree, or soon-to-be retiree, should understand about inflation. Not the textbook definition, the real, practical stuff. Which parts of your spending are most exposed, why some safe income sources aren't as safe as they feel, and what you can actually do about it. No jargon, no fear-mongering, just a clear picture so you can plan with your eyes open. Let's start with the big one. Point 1. Inflation quietly erodes your purchasing power, even at normal rates. Here's the mistake a lot of people make. They hear inflation is only running around 2 to 3% a year and think, that's nothing, I won't even notice it. But inflation compounds. It stacks on itself year after year. At just 3% a year, prices roughly double every 24 years. That means if you retire at 62 and live to 86, which is a completely normal life expectancy today, the cost of living in your final years could be roughly double what it was on day one of retirement. Your morning coffee, your utility bill, your car insurance, all of it doubled. Now, imagine this. Picture a woman named Carol. She retires at 63 with what feels like a very comfortable monthly budget. Her mortgage is paid off, her expenses are predictable, she feels secure. Fast forward 18 years. She's 81. Her income sources have grown a little, maybe through small cost of living adjustments, but her actual cost of living has crept up faster than she expected. The comfortable cushion she had at 63 is gone by 81, not because she overspent, but because prices simply moved and her income didn't move quite as fast. This is the core danger of inflation in retirement. It's not dramatic, it's gradual, and gradual problems are the easiest ones to ignore until they're not ignorable anymore. So here's your action step. Pull up your current monthly budget today, right now if you can, and ask yourself, what does this look like if every number here is 25% higher? That single exercise will tell you more about your real inflation exposure than almost any calculator online.
Point 2. Healthcare costs inflate faster than almost everything else. This is the one that catches retirees off guard the most. General inflation might average around 2 to 3% a year over time, but healthcare costs, especially things like prescription drugs, specialist care, and long-term care, have historically climbed faster than that, often outpacing overall inflation by a meaningful margin. Why does this matter so much for you specifically? Because as we age, healthcare naturally becomes a bigger slice of our spending. It's the one category that tends to grow just as your income is becoming more fixed. A 65-year-old couple retiring today should reasonably expect healthcare-related costs, premiums, out-of-pocket expenses, prescriptions, to add up to a very large number over the course of a 20 to 30-year retirement, often cited in the range of a few $100,000s combined, and that's before factoring in any long-term care needs. Think about a man named Frank. He budgets carefully for retirement and feels good about his numbers at 65. But by 75, a couple of new prescriptions and a specialist he sees twice a year have quietly become one of his largest monthly expenses, bigger than his grocery bill. He didn't do anything wrong. Healthcare costs simply grew faster than the rest of his budget, exactly as they tend to do for most people. Action step. If you haven't already, check whether you're eligible to contribute to or still have funds in an HSA. And if you're on Medicare, actually sit down once a year, not once and forget it, and review your plan during open enrollment. Costs and coverage shift constantly, and a 5-minute review can save you real money. If that healthcare number surprised you, drop a comment with your current age. I'm curious how many of us are already thinking about this and how many haven't looked at it yet. Point 3. Social Security's cost of living adjustment often falls short. Social Security does adjust for inflation through something called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment, and that's genuinely valuable.
It's one of the few income sources that at least tries to keep pace. But here's what a lot of people don't realize. The COLA is based on a general inflation measure that doesn't weight healthcare and other retiree-heavy expenses the way an actual retiree's budget does. So even when Social Security gives you a bump, it can still lag behind what your real personal cost of living is doing, especially in years when healthcare or housing costs spike faster than general prices. Picture a retired couple, Diane and Tom, living mostly on Social Security plus a modest pension. Each year they get a COLA increase and feel reassured. Good, we're keeping up. But because their actual spending leans heavily on healthcare and home maintenance, both of which have climbed faster than the general number, their real purchasing power has still slipped a little every year, just more slowly than it would have without the adjustment. The lesson here isn't that Social Security is unreliable, it's that you shouldn't assume it fully solves the inflation problem on its own. Action step: log into your Social Security account online and look at your actual benefit history over the last several years. Compare the dollar increases to what's happened with your own personal expenses, not just the national average. That gap will tell you how exposed you really are.
Point 4. Housing costs don't stop rising just because your mortgage is paid off. A lot of people assume that once the mortgage is paid off, housing stops being an inflation risk. That's only half true. Your mortgage payment might be fixed or gone, but property taxes, homeowners insurance, and maintenance costs are very much still exposed to inflation, and in many parts of the country, they've been rising quickly. Property tax assessments often increase as home values rise. Insurance premiums have climbed noticeably in many regions due to rebuilding costs and, in some areas, increased weather-related risk. And maintenance, a new roof, an HVAC replacement, appliance repairs, all cost more than they did even 5 years ago. Now, let's walk through a fuller example to bring this together. Meet Robert and Linda, a couple who retired at 65 with what looked like a rock-solid plan. Their mortgage was paid off, their retirement accounts were on track, they felt they'd done everything right. Fast forward 12 years. Robert is 77. Their property taxes have gone up nearly every year as their home's value increased. Their homeowner's insurance premium has climbed sharply after a couple of rate increases in their area. They needed a new roof at 74, and it cost noticeably more than the one they replaced 20 years earlier. None of these were emergencies. None of them were financial mistakes. It was simply the slow, steady math of inflation working on a category of spending they thought was done the day they paid off the house. This is exactly why housing needs its own line of thinking in your inflation plan. It's not just about the mortgage. Action step: separately estimate your property tax, insurance, and a reasonable annual maintenance reserve. Many planners suggest budgeting around 1% of your home's value per year for upkeep, and build in an assumption that these 3 costs will keep climbing even after the mortgage is gone. Point 5. The length of your retirement multiplies the risk. Here's something that trips people up. They think about inflation as a small annual number and forget to multiply it by time. A retirement that lasts 20, 25, or even 30 years gives inflation a lot of runway to work with. If you retire at 62 and live to 90, again, not unusual, that's 28 years for prices to compound. Even modest, normal inflation over that stretch adds up to a dramatically different cost of living by the end than at the start. The earlier you retire and the longer you live, the more this matters. Pause for a second and actually think about your own numbers. How many years are you planning your retirement income to last? If you haven't picked a number, I'll wait. Most people underestimate this, and it's worth getting a realistic one because it changes how you should think about growth versus safety in your portfolio. Action step: when you're building or reviewing your retirement income plan, plan for a longer time horizon than feels comfortable, 30 years rather than 20, so inflation has less room to quietly outrun you.
Point 6. You're not powerless. Here's how to actually protect yourself. Everything we've covered so far might sound like inflation is just something that happens to you. It isn't. There are practical, doable ways to build in some protection. First, keep some portion of your investments growing rather than moving everything to cash or ultra-conservative holdings the moment you retire. Cash feels safe day to day, but over a 20 to 30-year retirement, cash that isn't growing is quietly losing purchasing power every single year. Many financial planners recommend retirees keep a meaningful portion of their portfolio in growth-oriented investments, specifically to help offset inflation over the long run. The exact mix depends on your comfort with risk and your personal situation. Second, build a specific inflation buffer into your budget, rather than assuming your income sources will automatically keep pace. That might mean planning to increase your withdrawals slightly each year, or keeping a cash reserve you can draw from in years when costs jump faster than expected. Third, revisit your budget at least once a year, not just when something feels off. Inflation is gradual, which means it's easy to miss unless you're actually checking. And finally, remember that everyone's situation is different. Your income sources, your health, your location, your risk tolerance all change this picture. Treat everything in this video as a starting point for your own thinking, not personalized financial advice. So let's bring this together. Inflation isn't one big event. It's a slow, steady force that touches your income, your healthcare, your housing, and the sheer length of your retirement. The retirees who handle it well aren't the ones who ignore it or panic about it. They're the ones who plan for it deliberately, year after year. Here's your one clear X step. This week, take 15 minutes and write down your 3 biggest expense categories, and ask yourself honestly which of them are most exposed to rising costs. That single exercise will tell you more than any calculator. And if you want to know exactly how to calculate your personal retirement number, the actual figure you need saved to retire with confidence, watch the video I've got linked next. It walks through it step by step. And if this one helped make inflation feel a little less overwhelming, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss it.